welcome to week 9 of the college football season. My name is Mike Browning. I'm the host of the college football road trip at cfbroadtrip.com. I am home from a trip to Annapolis, Maryland to check out the Air Force Navy game last week. It was a great trip. The Naval Academy is a beautiful place. I was able to take a tour of the facilities. It was awesome. I'll be writing about that trip sometime over the next week, so hopefully by the time we get to next week's pick video, that blog will be out there ready for everyone to see. In the meantime, not a whole lot of great games this weekend, but that lets me pick a few games from a few of the lesser conferences, which is always fun to pick and always fun to watch those games as well. So with all that said, let's go ahead and jump into this week's picks. And we're going to start off with a game out of the MAC conference. We have Miami of Ohio traveling to Ohio. This is probably the first time I've picked a Miami of Ohio game 2 weeks in a row. Last week I picked them against Toledo. I picked them to lose. They did lose. But the MAC East is wide open between Buffalo, Ohio, and Miami of Ohio. So this is a big game as far as who's going to win this division of the conference. Miami, as I said, did lose to Toledo last week, but Toledo, I think, is the class of the MAC this year. I think Miami's going to be able to bounce back. This should be a really good game. I think it will go into the fourth quarter, but I think Miami will pull out in the end. I have Miami of Ohio winning on the road at Ohio in MAC play. Next, we're going to move over to the Mountain West Conference now. We have a good matchup between UNLV and Fresno State. UNLV is undefeated in conference play. Fresno State has one loss. That one loss is to a very good Wyoming team. The Mountain West in general is just very strong this year between Fresno State, UNLV, Wyoming, and undefeated Air Force. That's a great conference to be a part of this year. In this matchup, Fresno State is the home team. I think even though they have one conference loss of the season, I think they're going to want to bounce back. This is the first home game since that loss. They're going to want to show out. They always have a very strong home field advantage. They have a great crowd at their stadium every week. Because of that, they give Fresno State the edge. Fresno State wins at home over UNLV in Mountain West play. Next, let's go to the Sun Belt Conference. We have Old Dominion traveling to 25th ranked James Madison. James Madison is an interesting team in that they're undefeated. They're ranked 25th, but they are not eligible to go into the conference championship game or even compete for the group of 5 title that goes to one of the good bowl games at the end of the year. I know they've sent out a couple appeals that have been denied so far. Old Dominion is a team that they're 4-3 on the year, but 2 of the losses are to Power 5 conferences, including a close loss to Wake Forest. They're a pretty decent team. I think it's going to be a lot closer than the 20-point spread that is in place for this one. James Madison is favored big. I don't think they're going to meet the spread, but I do think that they will win in this matchup. James Madison wins at home over Old Dominion in Sun Belt play. Now let's start going to some of the Power 5 conferences. We have a good matchup in the SEC. We have 21st ranked Tennessee traveling to Kentucky. Both of these teams are 5-2 on the year. Tennessee obviously just had their loss to Alabama a couple weeks ago. Kentucky is a team that started off very strong, but the last couple of weeks they have struggled, and they have struggled big. I think the struggles are going to continue this week. I think Tennessee wants to be competitive in the SEC East. They need to win a game like this to be able to do it. Kentucky has been on the backslide. I think that will continue. Tennessee wins on the road at Kentucky in SEC play. Next, let's go to a couple of Big 12 matchups now. First, we have BYU traveling to 7th ranked Texas. BYU is the class of the 4 teams that have moved into the Big 12 from last year. Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati have all struggled. BYU's at least done decent. Texas is coming off a very close win against Houston, and when the spot of the ball at the end of the game might have cost Houston from being able to try to tie things up. Texas is going to want to bounce back. They're playing this one at home. BYU will be competitive for the first half, but Texas will pull away in the second. I have Texas winning at home over BYU in Big 12 play. Our next Big 12 matchup is number 6 Oklahoma traveling to Kansas. Speaking of teams that struggled against teams they probably shouldn't have last week, Oklahoma had to pull out a 2-point win over UCF thanks to a failed 2-point conversion at the end of the game. Kansas is a team that has struggled a little bit over the past few weeks, but they're still a very good team that can be competitive against Oklahoma in this one. I think Oklahoma, much like Texas, is going to want to bounce back in a big way this week. I think Kansas is going to keep it close for the first 3 quarters, especially being the home team in this one. I think Oklahoma is going to do enough in the 4th to be able to pull away. Oklahoma wins on the road at Kansas in Big 12 play. Next, let's go to a Big 10 matchup. We have 3rd-ranked Ohio State traveling to Wisconsin. Ohio State is a team that has started to look a little bit better over the past couple of weeks. They did struggle a little bit last week. Wisconsin is a team that's still right there in the Big 10 West, which is a wide open division. But Ohio State's going to have way too much in this one. Not really much to talk about. Close for a half. Ohio State pulls away. Ohio State wins on the road at Wisconsin in Big 10 play. Next, going back to the SEC, we have the cocktail party in Jacksonville. I know no one calls it that anymore, but number 1, Georgia will play Florida in Jacksonville. Florida is a team that has started to put a little bit back together after struggling the first part of the season. Georgia obviously is a team that had a good game against Kentucky a couple weeks ago, but then struggled again in the first half last week. You don't really know what you're going to get with this one. But Georgia does seem to rise to the occasion when the game is a big game. And even though Florida isn't ranked this year, this is always a big matchup. So I have Georgia winning. I have Georgia winning pretty big, pulling away in the second half. Georgia winning against Florida in SEC play in Jacksonville. Now let's go to our 2 ranked versus ranked matchups. Our first one is coming out of the ACC. We have 20th ranked Duke traveling to 18th ranked Louisville. Duke is coming off their loss to Florida State last week, where they were competitive in the first half and then lost pretty big into the second half. That all comes down to their quarterback, who was out in the second half last week with an ankle injury. The question around Duke is going to be, is he going to be able to come back this week? That's going to determine whether or not Duke is going to be competitive in this matchup. Louisville, on the other hand, they had their big win against Notre Dame. Then they came back and lost big last week. The question was, is Louisville going to be able to bounce back this week? I think they will, especially if Duke's quarterback is out and not able to compete. That's going to determine whether they win small or win big, but either way, Louisville is going to win this game at home. Louisville wins at home over Duke in ACC play. And then our biggest matchup this week is, again, out of the Pac-12, which seems to have all sorts of great matchups week in and week out. This week, it's number 8 Oregon traveling to 13th ranked Utah. Utah is coming off their win against USC last week. The question is that because USC is good or because Utah is good or USC is not? On the flip side, you have Oregon, which has been solid week in and week out. Yes, they have the loss to Washington, but that was a very competitive game. It's not like they got blown out of the park. Oregon, because of their competitiveness on both sides of the ball, they have a good offense and they have a good defense. On the flip side, Utah has a great defense, but their offense is still continuing to struggle, especially now with Cam rising out for the rest of the season. How is Utah going to respond to that? I think Oregon's going to be able to go in and pull out the win in this one. Oregon wins on the road at Utah in Pac-12 play. So those are our matchups for this week. A couple really good games, but also a good week to go and check out some of the other conferences that you might not see on a week-to-week basis. In the meantime, go enjoy the Week 9 games, everyone. We'll talk to all of you again next week.